Happy Mother's Day! I'm Candace Carrizales. Hopefully you have a great relationship with your mother, but if you need to remember that, hey, your mom isn't so bad, check out these 5 craziest killer moms. Number 5, Amy Archer-Gilligan. Sister Amy wasn't only a stone-cold murderer, but she has both a play and a film based on her murders. Arsenic and Old Lace, which seem a little wacky considering the subject.
Down there! But I saw them!
What's all the screaming about?
But I saw them!
It's way past her bedtime. Whoa.
The nursing home proprietor is known to have killed at least 5 people, including her husband, Michael Gilligan. She is suspected of killing at least 48 more people under her care at the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm. One of those suspected deaths was of her first husband, James Archer. He died of kidney failure a few weeks after she took out an insurance policy on him.
I'm a real messy bitch, a liar, a scammer.
Her second husband, Michael Gilligan, died of indigestion. They'd only been married for about 3 months. What does that mean? What is she putting in his stomach? A will claiming to give his entire fortune to his wife turned out to be a forgery.
I love robbery and fraud. I'm a messy bitch who lives for drama.
In fact, if you had money and you were around Archer-Gilligan, you were probably gonna die from complications of arsenic poisoning. She was eventually brought down when the family of Franklin R. Andrews, a seemingly healthy resident of the home, discovered that he'd passed away after gardening around the property. The family found letters of Archer-Gilligan pressuring Andrews to give her money. His sister noticed that Amy's clients would often pass away after giving her large sums of money. Pierce took her suspicions to the Hartford Courant, which ran multiple articles about the Archer-Gilligan murder house. Amy was eventually sentenced to life in prison, baby. That's right, she got what she deserved. Also, she was evidently addicted to morphine, so who knew? Number 4, Jean Lee. Lee's sad story takes place in Australia in the 1940s. I don't know what voice that I was doing. After being abandoned by her husband, she gave her daughter to her mother to live and became a thief and prostitute in Melbourne. Along with Robert David Clayton, she ran a scam called the Badger Game, where Lee would seduce men and Clayton would capture them in a compromising position, pretending to be an outraged husband. The man, usually married, would pay off Clayton not to tell his wife. If he refused, Clayton would beat the man and rob him. In 1949, Lee, Clayton, and another man named Norman Andrews were pulling the scam on 73-year-old William Pop Kent. The plan was for Jean Lee to keep Kent busy while the other 2 guys searched Kent's house for cash. When the trio couldn't find any money, they got violent. The next morning, Kent was discovered strangled and stabbed to death, and his penis had been cut off. Lee confessed to the murder, insisting that her lover Clayton knew nothing about it, but prosecutors rejected this story. In fact, even though Lee had participated in beating Kent, they believed that it had been Clayton and Andrews who had strangled and stabbed the victim. Nevertheless, Jean Lee was convicted and hanged in 1951. She became the last woman ever to be executed in Australia before capital punishment was banned in the country in 1967. Number 3, Diane Downs. Diane was a postal worker and mother of 3 from Lane County, Oregon. On May 19, 1983, she arrived at the hospital with her 3 children who had all been shot. She claimed she had been carjacked on a rural road and a shaggy-haired stranger had shot her kids, who were all under 10 years old. But hospital employees and police didn't think her story added up. She appeared too calm for someone who had just suffered a traumatic event, and forensic evidence didn't back up her claims.
Police say Diane's story never added up and charged her with the shootings. At the trial, Diane's surviving daughter, 9-year-old Christy, took the witness stand and testified that her mother was the shooter.
Detectives found that Downs had purchased a .22 caliber gun in Arizona, the same type of gun used to commit the murders. Her boyfriend at the time, Robert Knickerbocker, said that Downs had been stalking him and threatened to kill his wife. In 1984, she was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years, which I don't really know what that means. I guess your ghost lives on in jail for 50 plus years, and then the spirit is released into the Pacific Ocean. At a 2010 parole hearing, she maintained her innocence and retold the story of the shaggy-haired man in the road.
He jumped into the car, leaned into the car, and started firing the weapon. And it happened so quickly that by the time he stood up and faced me, it was over. I mean, it was just that fast.
And there are those out there who believe her and think the testimony of her surviving daughter, Christy, was coerced. People also think a man named James Haynes was the shaggy-haired killer from that night in 1983. The murder inspired a best-selling book by Anne Rule called Small Sacrifices and a TV movie of the same name, starring Farrah Fawcett as Diane. She'll be eligible for parole again in 2020 when she'll be 65 years old. Do you think she's gonna get it? Probably not. Number 2, Kimberly Clark signs. Next, we gallop on down to Texas. Kimberly was a wife and mother of 2 and also a nurse. She often used stolen prescription medication and had been fired 4 different times from healthcare jobs. In 2008, there were mysterious deaths at the clinic she was working at. 5 dead, 5 injured. She was fired after the deaths. She had only been working there for 8 months. There must have been a suspicion that she was doing it because her nursing license was suspended. In 2012, she was found guilty for the 2008 murders in the clinic. Wow, what a surprise. She committed the murders by drawing bleach into syringes and injecting it into the patient's dialysis lines.
Kim signs injected up to 10 patients with bleach, 10 dialysis patients with bleach. 5 of them died as a result, Nancy. 5 others were injured.
As I said before, 5 died, but 5 were survivors and witnesses. It is said that she got the bleach out of a mop bucket. These murders happened just a year after her husband filed for divorce due to domestic disturbances. It's believed there were more victims than just the 10 people in 2008, but they cannot find medical waste evidence dating far enough back to prove it. She was charged with first-degree murder and will spend life in prison. And a book was written about her titled Killer Nurse. Suitable name. And number 1, Catherine Knight. The murder that got Catherine on this list happened in 2000, but she has a history of shady stuff. After dropping out of school as a teenager, she began working at 16 at the local slaughterhouse, where she excelled at cutting up entrails and was even given her own set of butcher knives. Ho, ho, ho. When she was 18, she married her coworker, David Kellett. On their wedding night, Catherine's mother, Barbara, told David, "You better watch this one or she'll f***ing kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're f***ed. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll f***ing kill you. She's gotta screw loose somewhere." And that's when you get an immediate divorce or don't continue the marriage. That's extremely disturbing. It makes my stomach queasy, really upset I had to read that out loud. David found out her mother's words to be very true when she tried to strangle him after he fell asleep because they only had sex twice on their wedding night. She wanted to make it a whole 3 times. It was only twice. Honestly, I would just be so in love and happy to be married that I would take 0 times because I loved that person, so it clearly wasn't love, you know what I'm saying? In the late 1970s, after David had apparently ran off with another woman, Catherine ran shrieking through the street, "Ow! Ow!" and tossed her infant child on the railroad tracks. This woman is not a good mom, and I'm just gonna be the first one to say it. And thankfully, an old man who lived nearby saved the child's life. This episode was considered a postpartum depression. Doctors gave her pills, David returned, and they had another child. Eventually, in 1986, Knight dumped Kellett, and she began seeing another man named David Saunders. She slit the throat of his 2-month-old dingo pup right in front of him.
I went out and cut his dog's throat.
Was the dog dead?
It was a clean cut, they said.
And in later incidents, knocked him unconscious with a frying pan, hit him in the face with an iron, and stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. Knight apparently decorated their home with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, machetes, and pitchforks. She began dating John Price in the mid-90s, but this relationship was fraught with violence as well. He finally took out a restraining order on Knight after she stabbed him in the chest in February 2000. But even that's not the most horrifying part of this story. On the night of February 29, 2000, she stabbed John Price 37 times while he slept, then skinned his body and boiled his organs. Before taking an amount of pills she thought would kill her, she set the table for Price's 2 children, serving the meat of her dead lover with baked potato, pumpkin, zucchini, and gravy. Catherine Knight is currently serving life in prison at Silverwater Correctional Complex, which looks like a nice B&B? Happy Mother's Day! We hope your mom isn't like any of these moms. And I hope this Mother's Day just brings a little passive aggression and guilt complexes. And for some non-killer mom related stories, head to whatstrending.com. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year, Mother's Day.